Thank you all for coming, and I want to start by acknowledging that the events of the last few days have been incredibly difficult, and I think we all understand why. Unexpected change can bring uncertainty, and sometimes for many that can feel unsettling. But as hard as it may be, we all have a duty as a state to keep on going. Today begins a new chapter for New South Wales, and one that we will all write together. I am honoured that my colleagues have asked me to write that chapter as Premier, and I thank them for the confidence that they have put in me. The first thing I want to do today is to acknowledge my predecessor and pay tribute to her, Gladys Berejiklian, whose strong and steady leadership has seen us through so many difficult challenges. Everyone would agree that her hard work, tireless dedication, and total commitment to her job was second to none. She's been an inspiring role model for many, especially women and migrant communities. And that's just one of the reasons why I believe there has been such an outpouring of support over the last few days. It is my hope that I will continue the strong leadership that Gladys has shown throughout this pandemic. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate and acknowledge Stuart Ayres, who has been elected by the Liberal Party as my deputy. Stuart, as you all know, is a fighter for Western Sydney, and that is where the heart of this government will be. Thirdly, to my wife Helen and my kids, without your love and support, I would not be here today. Being Premier is a great honour, but I want to be clear that the job I have committed to today is not just to lead New South Wales, but to serve all the people of our state. For the past 18 months together, we've been battling a storm that is COVID-19. Some have lost their lives, many have lost their livelihoods. So many sacrifices, big and small, have been made by so many for so long. Not being able to leave our homes, not being able to go to work, not being able to visit our loved ones, parents having to work and balance homeschool at the same time. Many have missed weddings, many have missed funerals and the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones. These sacrifices are never easy, and I know for many they have taken a huge toll, physical, financial and psychological. In our regional communities as well, this has come off the back of floods, bushfires and drought. You don't get to choose the times in which you live, and this is one of the most challenging times that our people of our state have faced. But New South Wales has never shied away from the challenge, and we will be rising to this one as well. For long months, we have fought the good fight. That has been helped by our quality of our healthcare and our strong economic and financial foundations that have kept people in jobs and businesses in business. And now, whilst there are still more challenging days to come, there is light at the end of the tunnel, thanks to the way that everyone across our state has responded. We want New South Wales to bounce back, stronger, safer and more successful than ever before, to get back to the life that we love and the freedoms that we hold dear. As a former Treasurer, I know that a strong society needs a strong economy. And that's why our first priority will be to continue the plan that we have started, keeping people safe, opening up the economy and securing our recovery. Up until now, all our Liberal premiers have been infrastructure premiers, building the roads, the rail, the schools and the hospitals for communities right across our state. And that will not change with me. But I'll also be a family premier, focusing on how we can make life better for working families, living the Liberal values of opportunity, aspiration and hard work. The true strength of New South Wales is its people, our tradies, our working mums and dads, small business owners, community groups and frontline workers, our teachers, our nurses, our doctors, our paramedics, fireys and police. Our state is a rich tapestry with a rich history, from our proud First Nations people to those who have come here from every corner of the globe. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what you believe. It is the greatest privilege of my life to represent and serve every one of you. I know how big the challenge ahead is for our state, but I love New South Wales, and that is the passion that will fuel me and fuel my team. A stable, united government is vital to getting on with the work that we've begun, so there'll be no cabinet reshuffle until we are through this challenge. Our team will bring the energy, the experience to get our state safely open again and then take it to the next level. We live in the best state, in the best country in the world, and together we will make it even better. I will ask the Deputy Leader, Stuart Ayres, to make a few comments, and then we'll take all your questions.
Thank you, Dominic. First and foremost, I'd really like to acknowledge and thank my family, my parents, Gary and Leslie, my brother John, for their unwavering support over my time as a Member of Parliament and the work that I've done right across Western Sydney. To Maurice, who's currently in isolation, what a time to be doing quarantine. Thank you for being a rock through this period of time and this transition. Your commitment to our nation, our state and to Western Sydney has been a really stabilising and guiding force for me, and it's been incredibly useful over the last couple of days. I also want to say a very big thank you to my parliamentary Liberal colleagues for their confidence in unanimously supporting me as their Deputy Leader. I am looking forward to working with Dominic Perrotte to make sure that this government is stable, united and focused on the people of New South Wales. I also want to say a very big thank you to all of the people of Penrith. Yes, our footy team won on Sunday night, but this is an amazing community. We've got a lot to celebrate, and I simply wouldn't be here today without your dedication and your commitment, and my passion for this community knows no bounds. Dominic Perrotte is going to be an outstanding Premier of New South Wales. He's got the runs on the board. He's been there to do the heavy lifting. He understands how to run a household budget, and he understands how to run a state budget. This is a team that is focused on everyone across this state. We have been through immense challenges, whether it's the city or the suburbs, the coast or the bush. We are going to remain focused on the people of New South Wales. We are going to come out of this pandemic stronger than ever before, and we're going to get people back in work. Thanks very much.
So when you say no cabinet reshuffle until we're through this challenge, how would you define being through this challenge? Is it the December 1 opening day?
My expectation is that over summer, and I'll work through that, but ultimately right now, the focus of this government is on the people of our state. We are at an incredibly important juncture. On Monday, the state opens up, and we want to get people back into work, get businesses open again, and that is the sole focus of our government today.
What are you going to do about the treasurer?
Sorry, Ash.
Without a treasurer, the treasurer and a transport minister. So what are you going to do about those?
Well, we'll work through that. My intention is that Minister Ayres will take over the portfolio as treasurer, and we will work through those other. Sorry, Mr. Keane, those other arrangements. But ultimately, my commitment today is that we will keep the team in place until we get to summer. This is an important time. There's not a time for people to be focusing on themselves. The people of New South Wales need us to be focused on them. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Just to clarify,
Keane, sorry, Minister Keane. Yep.
transport?
I'll work through that. Obviously, the National Party tomorrow has their party room meeting. So once that is decided, I will speak to the new Deputy Premier of New South Wales, and we'll work through that. But my intention today is that Minister Ayres will be sworn in the portfolios of jobs and investment. Minister Hazzard will be sworn in as the Health Minister. Minister Keane will be sworn in as the Treasurer, and I'll be sworn in as the Premier of the state.
Freedom Day. Freedom Day. As Vice Berejiklian set out, we're due to hit 70% double dose either tomorrow or the next day. You're not tempted to give Sydney-siders and New South Wales their weekend back early?
Well, what I commit to doing is this afternoon, after the swearing in, I'll be sitting down with Minister Hazzard and the health team alongside Minister Ayres and members of the Crisis Cabinet to have a discussion in relation to the roadmap. But obviously, this is early days, and we have done so well. My intention at this stage is that that day will remain on Monday for next week, but there are a number of issues that need to be looked at, and obviously health is our number one priority right now, and I'll be sitting down with the Minister and the health team this afternoon.
In terms of the health advice for the unvaccinated, would you be looking to bring that December 1 date forward if the health advice...
I don't want to preempt any of that. I think if you look at the success of our state, our successes has been based on the vaccination rates. We've had one of the fastest vaccination rates in the world, not just in the country, and that is a testament to every single person right across the state. We would not be here in this position today where we're opening up on Monday based for the sacrifices and the efforts that every single person across this state has made. We will obviously look at the roadmap. We're committed to it. Both Minister Ayres and myself played an important role in developing that with the Premier and the Deputy Premier, but we'll work through those issues over the course of the day.
Would you have preferred to have an uncontested leadership? It was first contested ballot since 2002. And what would you say to those 5 people that voted for Rob Stokes sitting here?
Well, I think one of the most... This has been a very difficult time, as you could imagine, coming on the resignation of the Premier on Friday. But over the course of the weekend, the professionalism, the maturity, the unity that our entire party room has had during this period, I think has been exceptional. And I'm very proud to lead a team that has one focus, and that's on the people of our state. Rob Stokes is a great mate and a great minister in this government, and will continue to play a very important role. I think we're blessed that we have so many people in our team who could put their hands up to run for leader. That's a sign of depth in a team. I am simply today the leader, but there are many ministers in our cabinet and many members in the party room who will play an important role in this government going forward.
Corruption inquiry cloud, Deputy Premier quit, Transport Minister's quit, 2 other former Liberal MPs are under investigation. There is a perception this is a government in chaos. Why should the New South Wales people vote for you?
Well, there's no doubt that over time in a government there will always be a refreshing, there will always be a renewal, and that's a positive thing. It's a very positive thing. But this has been a team effort. Throughout the pandemic, the last 18 months, there have been ministers of the cabinet, ministers of the crisis cabinet that have worked very closely, and that's testament to the former Premier Gladys Berejiklian. She's allowed us as key members of the team to make a contribution, and I believe we have a very strong team here in New South Wales. We are a very good government. We have turned around the state in 10 years, a state that was in a situation where its finances were broken, where its infrastructure was well behind where it should have been. We have turned that all around. And the team that we have, the cabinet members that we have in our team, I believe provide that stability and that strong track record that has set our state up for success. Last year was a very difficult year for our state, like it was around the world. But all the jobs we lost, the close to 300,000 jobs we lost, we recovered, plus 30,000 more. Our economy was stronger in the June budget this year than it was at the start of the pandemic. That has been a team effort from every single member of our team, and I believe that this team will be united, strong, and continue that track record, the legacy of Gladys Berejiklian, to take our state to new heights.
You've inherited.
Gender equality in his cabinet. Is that something you consider as you pick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no. I mean, let's begin with the fact that we've been blessed by having the first elected female Premier of New South Wales serve our state for 5 years. That is a very proud aspect of for the New South Wales Liberal Party. As I've said, I'm not going to be conducting a reshuffle until obviously later in the year, and I'll work through those issues. But I think it's very important that a cabinet is diverse as possible. That's what it's been in the past, and I remember in the election campaign last year, people were raising questions about the diversity of the New South Wales cabinet. That was at a time when we had the first female Premier in Gladys Berejiklian and a Deputy Premier in John Barilaro. I think that's a great aspect of the Liberal Party and the National Party, and obviously I'd want to ensure that diversity continues in the future, because a diverse cabinet ensures a strong government.
Greater female representation, is that something that you commit to?
No, it's something I'll work towards. I'm not making any commitments in relation to the cabinet. We aren't focused on ourselves today. We are focused on the people of New South Wales, and that's what I'm committed to.
Premier, you've obviously turned your focus to Western Sydney through Mr Ayres, and we've spoken about that. Is that a
Well, but our party and our government has always had a strong focus on Western Sydney. We have invested more in schools and hospitals, roads and public transport over the time that we've been in government. Stuart Ayres is a fighter. He is somebody who sits in cabinet fighting for the people of Western Sydney, and that's exactly what I expect. The values of our party, the aspirational, the work ethic, the opportunity for a fair go, they are fundamental values of Western Sydney and fundamental values of the Liberal Party. So we know it's been, during this course of the Delta outbreak, particularly challenging for the people of Western Sydney. And that's obviously going to be what I want to see as we move forward, is that New South Wales comes out of this period of time stronger than ever right across the board, and Western Sydney is going to be the engine room of that.
Much has been made by about what your views are.
Well, my religious views and my Christian faith is something I'm incredibly proud of, as many people across our state are. And that is something that is personal to me and personal to many people. And I think that's incredibly important. We live in a very diverse society. I think some of the criticism in relation to that diversity has been unfounded. And I'm proud to live, and I love our state, and I love the diversity and the multicultural backgrounds and the religious backgrounds. Diversity should be celebrated. It shouldn't be criticised. People should judge people on who they are and what they say, not based on some religious element. And I'm very proud of the fact that I have a strong Christian faith. Does that in any way take away my capacity to serve as Premier? Well, I don't think so. And I think it's a sad thing that some people do. But I think in the main, people right across our state believe in freedom of religion and freedom of the opportunity to serve in public life, regardless what your ethnic background is or what your religious values are.
Premier, you would be described as the most conservative Premier New South Wales will have seen since World War II. Are you going to be living up to that title?
Well, that's for other people's judgments. But, I think I have served diligently in my roles as Finance Minister and Treasurer of the State. I'm incredibly passionate, hard-working, and I, as Premier, will serve every single person across this state, regardless what your beliefs are, what your religion is, the role of the Premier, and why I'm incredibly proud today and humbled to be in this role and to be appointed by my party room, is to serve every single person right across the state, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Can I ask you about the other big global challenge we're facing, climate change?
Yep.
What are your views on this? Because there's been various reports of what you've said in the past. And what will your government be doing towards meeting net zero by 2050?
Well, the great thing about this government when it comes to meeting our net zero target is that we are completely on track without any policy change at all. Comments that I've made in the past have been in respect of my, obviously, fiscal conservatism in relation to making sure that when government invests money, invests for impact and makes a difference to people's lives. Government shouldn't measure success in the size of the spend. They should measure success in taxpayer money, in the outcomes they provide to improve people's lives right across the board, to make our society have greater opportunity and greater prosperity for people right across New South Wales. And that's what I've always stuck to. I've been very proud to be Treasurer, to work with Minister Keane on some of our world-leading policies, our renewable energy zones, our electric vehicles reform, which is due to be debated, I believe, in the Parliament next week, which we announced in this year's budget. I remember when Minister Keane came to Cabinet in relation to our position around net zero, the reality was, at this stage, the New South Wales government does not need to change any policy settings. And why? Because of our strong track record in this space. So when it comes to climate change and the environment, I believe our government is not just nation-leading, but world-leading in that space. And I'm very proud to be part of that government. And we've got, I think, the most active and passionate Environment Minister in the country, if not the world.
Premier, you said you're going to be a Premier for families. If you're a female leader, you would be asked, how you can manage being Premier and also a parent of 6 children. So I think it's fair that I ask you that today. What do you think?
Well, it's demanding. I mean, being a father like being a mother. Like when you've got family commitments, balancing work and family life is a challenge for every single person right across the state. And ultimately, I think what I might lose in time, I gain in perspective. And everyone has their attributes, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and I'm no different to that. But one thing I do know is that I have a very strong team around me. I've got a strong family, and I've got a strong ministerial team who will ensure that our focus is on the people of New South Wales and that we come out stronger the other side. And we're going to take our state from good to great. And yes, I have family commitments, but that should not disqualify one from the job. I think it enriches you. It gives you a different perspective. And with all the different ministers in the team, I think we set ourselves up to make a real difference to the people of our state.
It's a bit on the sacrifices, though. I mean, you might not be able to coach basketball on the weekends anymore. There's going to be moments you miss.
Well, I haven't had those conversations yet.
Is it going to be worth it?
Well, I think that the opportunity and the privilege to serve the people of the state is enormous. If I didn't believe that I could make the difference to improve the lives of every person in this state, then I wouldn't be standing up here today. They are decisions that you contemplate, you speak to your family about. Yeah, there'll be challenges, I know with that. And perhaps disappointments of things that, of family events and time that I may not have. But that will drive me even more to make sure that every single hour of my day when I'm at work is dedicated to the improvement of the lives of every person across the state.
Just a bit on the other thing, Mr. Perrotte. School. Well, do you want kids to go back to schools next week? It's already been brought forward a week the 18th. Why not bring forward to the 11th?
Look, I've just been appointed and I haven't even been sworn in yet in terms of making policy decisions in relation to that. But obviously we've had significant debates. I, like every parent across this state, wants their kids back in school as quickly as possible. So I can tell the people of New South Wales today, I'm committed to doing that. We have a roadmap at this stage. That roadmap is in place, and I'll work through those details. As I said, I've got a meeting with Stuart and the health and Brad and the health team this afternoon. We'll have a discussion around those issues. But and obviously, if there were to be any changes, which I don't want to preempt because we haven't considered it, the Education Minister would need to provide advice on that.
Premier, are you still committed to GST reform and your stamp duty reform as a priority now that you are Premier?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's start with GST reform. The most important thing on GST is that the federal government does not remove the no worse off clause. That is essential. I mean, I know I've been outspoken in the past in relation to that, but we had to be, and we secured a great deal for New South Wales and for every other state, particularly Victoria, based on the changes that were made that substantially benefited Western Australia. And I'm not going, and I have complete respect for my federal colleagues and my Liberal counterparts, but ultimately, I'm not paid by the Liberal Party. I'm paid to do a job for the people of New South Wales, and I'm going to fight for the people of New South Wales every single day. We did that last time. We got that no worse off clause. There's a review of GST reform, and I'll make sure, and the new Treasurer, Minister Keane, will make sure that New South Wales gets a better deal than we've had in the past. And ultimately, we have supported other states, and we always see that as our role. We're the strongest state in the country, and we should always support smaller states. But in circumstances where Victoria and New South Wales, under these new arrangements, if that no worse off clause is removed, we'll have a heavy burden, a very heavy burden in supporting those states. And I think WA particularly needs to come to the table and get a deal that's fair for the country.
How are you going to?
Yeah, and in relation to stamp duty, look, that's something we're committed to. Obviously, it's been a bit of a distraction since the New South Wales budget. We've announced the progress paper, but a real focus for this government will be housing affordability. We are facing a real challenge right now when it comes to generational equity, when many young people today cannot get their keys to their very first home. And we have a duty to ensure that generations that come after us have greater opportunity and prosperity than we have. And in order to do that, reform is key. Reform is crucial. It is tough. It is very rarely achieved in a bipartisan way because the political advantage is too tough. But I'm here to do what's right, to serve our people, and if there are tough decisions and tough reforms that need to be made on the way, then we will do it. But ultimately, you only reform and take on those challenges and circumstances where you're improving the lives of people across our state, and that's the end point.
How do you think you're going to go? Sorry, Premier. How do you think you're going to go negotiating with the other premiers? You now enter national cabinet as well. So, in terms of opening the borders, how do you think you'll go with the other?
Well, I would think pretty well. I mean, a lot of the premiers also serve as treasurers, so I know many of them, and I've worked with many of them over the years. I think.
You call the Western Australian Premier Golan, though. How do you think he's going to go with this?
Well, this is not a kumbaya session. This is about fighting for our state, and Mark fights for his state. But my job is to represent the people of New South Wales. And when it comes to GST and some of those issues which are coming to a head, I'm not going to stand by and have New South Wales worse off because whilst there might not be that much public interest in GST reform, it's GST that pays for our schools and our hospitals and our nurses and our teachers and our police officers. It's incredibly important. So I've always, with Labor premiers and Labor treasurers and other Liberal treasurers across the state, always had a robust but constructive relationship. And I know division can be easy and promoted in the newspapers, but one of the, I think, great aspects of this pandemic has been the way in which Labor treasurers and Liberal treasurers have worked very closely together around the country to secure great outcomes. And Tim Pallas in Victoria is a very good friend of mine, and the sharing of information, of stimulus support, economic support, that has all come through the unity that we have. So I would not expect that to be any different working with the premiers, many of whom I've worked with over the last 5 years.
Have you spoken to Scott Morrison? Have you spoken to Scott Morrison yet today? How are you going to manage that relationship with him? There has been some hurdles or bumps in that relationship recently, particularly in the last couple of weeks.
Look, I have a very constructive relationship with the Prime Minister. I haven't spoken to him today, but I will. And I've known Scott for many years in the Liberal Party, but I don't see why there could be seen to be an issue where you have a disagreement. Disagreement is good. You want a passionate Prime Minister. You want a passionate Premier. You want passionate treasurers, those who will stand up and fight for their state. And that means, from time to time, you're not always going to agree. But once you've had those discussions, you move on. Scott's a passionate guy, and that will, from time to time, lead to disagreements. But disagreements aren't necessarily a bad thing in their own way.
Have you spoken to Gladys Berejiklian since you've been voted in?
No, I haven't had the chance yet, but she messaged me yesterday and delivered in relation to wishing me well, and also to pass on to the party room a message which I don't want to go into, but which I did today.
And are you concerned about the ICAC inquiry is going to start on October 18 in the first few weeks of your premiership? Is that going to be quite distracting having a former premier up in the box?
Look, nothing will distract us from our job to look after the people of New South Wales. That's exactly what we are doing. We're about to announce our economic recovery plan, and we will do that very shortly. The people of New South Wales are focused on getting back into work, getting their businesses open, and looking after their healthcare at a very difficult time. And that's what I'm focused on. People will commentate on the sides, that's fine, but that will not be a distraction for this government.
Ms. Berejiklian set the standard that any ministers under investigation by the ICAC need to stand aside. Just for the record, will you set the same standard?
Absolutely. That's been the position of the New South Wales government for some time.
You've got to guarantee your colleagues that no more will resign if Parliament before the end of the term.
Oh, look, well, I've had a great opportunity, like others, to speak to many colleagues over what has been a very difficult weekend for many, and there is strong commitment from colleagues that I wouldn't expect there to be any more. No, yeah.
Since Lord Carl has been going through premiers on a regular basis, you being such a young premier, a lot of working life left, how long do you
Premier?
Oh, look, that's not. I mean, how I'll answer that is every day that I'm in this job, I work my guts out for the people of the state. It's a real honour and privilege to be in this position. I'm humbled by it, to serve our people, and I will work every single day for them. And I also don't think that having different premiers over this period of time is not necessarily in of itself a bad thing. We've had great renewal in our government, from O'Farrell to Baird to Berejiklian, and I think every one of those premiers has brought a different skill set, which has really benefited the people of our state.
Treasurer, do you have a preference for who the Nationals vote in as leader tomorrow?
Oh, no, the Nationals have a great team. I haven't followed it closely over the last 24 hours, but whoever is their leader, I know will do a great job. Regional New South Wales is a core focus for the New South Wales government, always has been. As I said yesterday, John Barilaro is also a fighter. As the former chair of Expenditure Review Committee, I would say sometimes too much of a fighter, but the reality is regional New South Wales has had significant investment under this government, and that's because of the great relationship between the Liberal Party and the National Party. And I would expect that healthy relationship to continue, whoever they decide to elect as their leader tomorrow. Alex.
Has Berejiklian had an agreement with the critical crossbenchers of guaranteeing supply and confidence? They say that was with that Premier, the new Premier would have to renegotiate. Are they going to be the top of your list? Because you're going to need those crossbench independent MPs more than ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alex, obviously parliamentary stability is incredibly important. I've already had one of those crossbenchers reach out to me today, and obviously I will sit down with them because, and in fact I was very impressed by the message because it showed the importance of stability for the people of our state during the pandemic. So obviously, just like the former Premier, I will sit down with all the crossbench shortly and work through any issues that they may have to make sure that the Parliament of New South Wales remains the stable as it's been over the past years. You don't choose, like, there are always challenges in the Parliament, regardless whatever time you're in, minority government and majority government. As long as you're focused on the people of New South Wales, we'll get through it.
Mr. Perrotte, given your Treasury focus, can we expect your first sort of sweetener for the state to be some restart grants for businesses or perhaps any more voucher programs to kickstart the economy? They were a huge hit.
Well, they were. Look, what we learnt last year, we got some things wrong last year during the pandemic. We moved fast. We put the economy before the budget, working families across the state before the budget, and I've had an opportunity to evaluate over the period of time those programs that worked, those that didn't work so well. I think what you'll see in the economic recovery package are once again re-announcements of measures or extension of measures that I believe were successful last year. We're putting the finishing touches on it. It's due to take the Premier through that, and we'll announce it shortly. But this is going to be an important part as we open up. So from 70% to 80%, these are the measures that I believe will help stimulate the economy as we head into summer. And it's going to be a very good summer. I know it's been a difficult time, but I have complete hope and optimism that our state's future is incredibly bright. And I think the success of last year, both on an economic and jobs front, all came from the fact that we prioritised our stimulus measures. We had great social outcomes off the back of it, and you'll see that as well in the economic recovery. Like those programs, and social and affordable housing, for example. I was able to see firsthand how we could invest money quickly, get people into work, and provide housing off the back of it. So where we had success last year, we'll double down this year.
Your party's about to face an assisted dying bill.
Yep.
The last time we saw a bill like this was abortion. It almost tore your party apart. How do you plan to navigate that now?
Well, delicately. But the Parliament needs to be mature enough, and I think in the main, conscience votes bring out the best in our parliaments. There is respect from both sides in relation to people's views, and that's incredibly important. These are difficult, sensitive and challenging issues. My view has always been, as a member of the Liberal Party, in the Howard tradition, that we provide for conscience votes on those issues. So obviously I will talk to colleagues in relation to that. That's ultimately a matter for our cabinet and our party room, but that is my disposition in relation to that. And yes, there were challenges last time. I accept that. I think we can learn from that. But ultimately as well ensure that any of those, this debate, amongst others, people treat everyone with respect and dignity. And in the main, that's what occurred last time, despite some of the challenges, and I expect that will occur again. Well, it's not a government bill, so there'll be once a bill is introduced, then the government and the cabinet will look at it.
Premier, your government has come under scrutiny over its grants making. The National Party leader calls himself Pork Barrelaro. What would
Well, he was
you
joking.
do?
He was joking.
Maybe.
It was in jest.
What will you do to reform the grants making process in your government?
Well, I think, the grants programs have had a substantial impact on regional New South Wales. People can sit back and criticise the investment, but under Labor there was no investment. We have made substantial investments in our rural and regional communities right across the board, and that's incredibly positive, and I'm very proud of our record. Now, there are ministers in place who are responsible for grants, and they are the ones who are responsible. As Expenditure Review Committee sits there, we set out the guidelines, and yes, occasionally there may be criticism in relation to grants that are provided. That's fair enough. There should be criticism. I expect the public to critique every government decision that is made, and every dollar, and as somebody who's come from the Treasury portfolio and the finance portfolio over the last 8 years, I expect every single taxpayer dollar to be invested with impact, to make a real difference to people's lives. And if they're not, that would concern me.
Berejiklian waved off pork barrelling. She said everybody does it. Is that your position as
No, it's not my position. It's not my position. Every investment the state makes needs to have make a difference to people's lives. I don't care what colour the electorate is in relation to its political persuasion. We have a duty to govern for all, and I'll be making sure, as Premier, that every dollar we spend improves the lives of families right across our state.
You have a mountain to climb.
Have you had to make any promises on
No.
possible ones? Have you had to sell your soul in any way that we don't know about yet?
Not at all. And I think part of the discussions of the weekend, there are no deals. There is agreements came into being, and I will always be genuine to myself. And obviously, I'm not I'm just one person amongst many. And my job as a Premier is to consult my colleagues, to collaborate with them, and that's the best way of getting better outcomes for the people of our state.
You're going to have a lot going on over the next, couple of weeks, especially in terms of getting us out of lockdown. There's a lot going on. How concerned are you about the distraction of having your predecessor sitting in a stand at a corruption inquiry that could potentially engulf the entire government's decision-making process?
Liz, I can tell you my entire focus on the people of our state, and that is the entire focus of every single person in my team. We are a week away from opening up our state. Yes, there will be a hearing, and the ICAC will do its work. But the people of New South Wales have gone through an incredibly difficult time. And our focus is on one thing only. That's keeping people safe, getting the economy open, getting people back to work, and getting businesses back in business. That's our focus, and nothing will distract us from that task.
Just in terms of back to gender equality, you've been left with a cabinet that just has 2 Liberal women in it.
Yep.
In your mind, is that enough?
No. And as I said, I want a diverse cabinet, and I'll make those changes at the appropriate time. Today, this month is not the appropriate time. What is appropriate right now is that we open up safely, we get people back into work, and our track record as a state when it comes to women's issues is incredibly positive. Just in the budget last year, we announced we're world lead, not just certainly leading the nation when it comes to miscarriage leave and premature baby leave. Like we have a very strong track record in that space, but I think that is improved. I think that is no doubt improved by having more women in the cabinet and having more diversity. More diversity leads to better government, and that's something I'll focus on. I'm just not focusing on it now.
Laura's question before about voluntary assisted dying. Did you have to assure some of the moderates in your party that you wouldn't block a conscious vote on voluntary assisted dying?
No,
Gain their support?
not at all. In fact, commentators can commentate, but I'd already made prior to any of these issues occurring, my position had already been very clear in my views, they're long-held views that the Liberal Party on these issues has a conscience vote. That's not changed.
Will you be seeking to reform the ICAC? I mean, a lot of your colleagues have said that it needs to be overhauled, that hearings shouldn't be held in public as they are. They should be private, similar to a Hong Kong model. Is that something you'll be seeking?
That is not a focus of mine. That is not a focus of mine. The integrity agencies, the ICAC, have an important role to play. They will do their work, and their work should be respected.
Should they have their funding independent of the executive government?
Look, well, I've had these debates as Treasurer, and I have a view that that's the role of the Expenditure Review Committee in relation to the allocation of funding. But I know there's a report. I'll look at the report in this role, and we'll make some decisions. Whether it's the ICAC or other areas of government like the Electoral Commission, there's a whole array of bodies that believe there should be different arrangements in place. I'll look at it. I'll form a view and consider it.
Just in regards to any deals, will Stuart get a new stadium for Berejiklian?
Well, let's have we're not going to have stadium wars again. But you know, Stu's a passionate guy for Western Sydney. What you're going to get with Stuart Ayres is more investment in Western Sydney. That's what he's. Well, no, we're not going to preempt stadiums here. What we'll say is that we want to make sure that wherever you live in this state, particularly Western Sydney, that it's the best place to live, to work, to run a business, to raise a family. And we announced recently with the WestConnex transaction that we've created a $5 billion fund, the West Invest Fund, and that's all about not necessarily investing in hard infrastructure, investing in culture, in open spaces, in recreational activities. And that's what we're completely committed to as a government. But I'm not going to preempt those decisions. I'm not going to preempt, Alex. You might want the stadium. Stuart certainly wants a stadium. And look, last election there was a battle in relation to it. I'm very proud of our track record, our record investments in schools, in hospitals, in public transport and sporting infrastructure. And we'll continue that because Victoria would be very proud of the fact that they've made investments in their sporting facilities. Mediocre doesn't work with me. I'm going to take our state from good to great, and that means investments right across the board to ensure that our state is the best place to live, work, run a business, raise a family. That's what I'm passionate about, and I'll make the investments that achieve that goal.
Do LGBTQI communities have any reason to be concerned under your leadership?
Not at all. I think a fundamental premise of my values is respect and dignity for everyone. I think that has been the way that I've conducted myself in public life. I love diversity. I think that's what makes our state great. And I'm not having the deep honour and privilege to be here today and to serve the people of our state. I will serve every single one of you.
You voted against decriminalising abortion, so can women in New South Wales be assured that you have their best interests at heart?
Absolutely. There are always different views in relation to those issues, and they're very challenging, sensitive and difficult. The position I took on that was similar to the position that many people in the Parliament took, and that many people across our state hold. They're difficult decisions. They're not easy, but public life is not easy. And as I've always said, on issues of that nature that come up from time to time, they're rare, but when they come up from time to time, our party will always have a conscience vote, and I think that's incredibly important.
Lockdowns be a thing of the past in New South Wales from Monday long term?
Well, I don't want to go back into lockdown. Now, we're committed to the national roadmap, and that is clearly set out in the Doherty report that from time to time there may be the need for targeted restrictions. But ultimately, we've got to learn to live alongside this virus, and vaccination has been the key to doing it, and that ensures we don't go backwards. This virus is not going away. It will be with us. It's part of life. And the way that we can protect the health care of our people is through vaccination. And I'm proud to be to be leading a state where its people have come out in droves and been vaccinated and kept and ensured that we're able to open up as quickly as possible. We aren't opening up on Monday because of the government. We're opening up on Monday because of our people and the sacrifices and effort they have made. I'm not getting ahead of that. Both Stuart and I have been part of the crisis cabinet that's worked on the roadmap. It's our roadmap, alongside the work the Premier and the Deputy Premier did in putting that together. So there's no change to government policy.
You said March 2023. Are you the underdog?
Well, that's for commentators like you, Alex, in relation to that. What's more important than winning elections is serving our state well, and that's what I'm focused on. I'm completely committed to the people of our state. I believe we are a very good government with a strong track record that turned around the state's economy, that got people back into work, that have built the public transport that had been long promised by the previous government and never delivered. And now everywhere you go across our state, there is more public transports, greater road access. We have invested a lot in the people of our state. We have a great track record, but we've got to keep going. There's a bright future ahead, and there are great days for New South Wales. And my commitment as Premier, instead, is to take our state from good to great, to take it to the next level, and ultimately, the people of New South Wales will make their decision in 2023.
Do you commit to delivering on all the road and transport commitments or the infrastructure projects that have previously been announced?
Well, where the investment decisions have been made by the state government, we remain completely committed to that. It's a difficult time, obviously, from a financial perspective, but I look at last year and it was tempting at points in time to pull back on some of those projects. It was because of the financial position of the state. But we stayed the course. And we stayed the course, and that has delivered significant stimulus for the New South Wales economy. It kept people in work. Our public investment in infrastructure has driven jobs growth and economic growth over the course of this period of time, adding around 0.5 percentage points to our economic growth. That's just the state's investment. That has been key to our success. And it's not just during the construction of those public transport and road projects and schools and hospitals. Yes, that's important, but the social good, the social outcome that comes off the back of it. And let's not forget where we were. Yeah, they're tough. There are tough decisions. I know the Labor leader, they were against the WestConnex project. The WestConnex is now a tourist attraction. People love driving on it. It gets people home to their families faster. These are the projects that, yes, are challenging in delivery. They're challenging in their financing, but they make a real difference to people's lives. And this government will not shy away from the hard decisions to improve the lives of people right across New South Wales.
What's the plan for tonight? What does a lockdown leadership celebration look like?
Well, I don't think we can because of the current restrictions in place.
No,
well, I mean, obviously it's going to be a big day. The swearing in is after this. But I'll probably have a glass of wine with my wife tonight. Yeah.
Can I just ask? I just want to get a sense of your leadership heroes, people that you look up to in leadership positions, present, past.
Well, I think I'll start with Gladys on the sense that she worked tirelessly. I mean, I learned a lot from. I've been very fortunate to learn from her. I've sat as chair of ERC and worked very closely with her during the last 5 years. I've seen her selfless dedication to the people of New South Wales. Now, we don't always get it right, but I can tell you this. I've never met a more resilient person in my life. And she always, in every decision that she made, had the people of New South Wales at its heart. So I've certainly learnt that. And then obviously through leaders before on both sides of politics, whether it's John Howard or Paul Keating, I think there are always good people in politics, regardless whether they're in the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the National Party or the Greens. There are very good people, and I think you can learn from many, and I've had the opportunity to do that over a period of time.
Mr. Perrotte, Paul was announced to run as leader of the Nats. What do you think of him as a sidekick?
No, he's a good bloke, Paul, and he's served his electorate well. I think he came into Parliament in 2011 with me, and I think he won that seat from the Independents. He's a strong campaigner. And he's the deputy leader, so I've worked very closely with him over this period of time. I'll work with whoever the National Party elect tomorrow. They've got, I think, a couple of candidates running, Mel Pavey as well. They're all very good people, and they'll make a great contribution to rural and regional New South Wales. Thanks very much.